Hello everyone, this is Jimmy and welcome to episode 32 of Project Ozone 3. Remember this transmutation table? I've been keeping it stocked with our nether stars now. Give ourselves some EMC, 5 billion. And while 5 billion sounds like a lot, we have some items like this lime matter, which we need for the wand of animation. I think we need 9 of them. That cost 3 billion each. So I've actually used up every single nether star. We have, 35 left. And I've actually started moving on to Terra Steel as my secondary source of EMC because Terra Steel ingots, we grow them on our farm. They grow pretty quickly, and if I need more EMC, I just come here, give me a bunch of Terra Steel, and I'll just have it like pre-craft a bunch of it for me, and I shove it all in here. Anyways, let's see. So for today, I want to make the wand of animation. Um, this recipe has has some things in it that are pretty easy now, right? Lime matter, it's just a bunch of EMC essentially. Anything with an EMC cost isn't that difficult to make, but there are a few challenges. Um, I guess we'll start from the Mirion singularity. So a Mirion singularity takes a quantum compressor. Um, let's see, this recipe doesn't look too bad. I think we can make this. Yeah. Um, but it also takes, we see this 9,000 blocks of Mirion. So I mentioned before, there's a couple ways to make Mirion, right? We can either alloy it in the alloy transformer with, let's see, Elementium, Terrasteel, Manasteel, Cobalt, and Glass at 72 millibuckets per second and change. Or I'm thinking we'll make the ARF Tools dimension and pump it. However, to make the ARF Tools dimension, we need, I think it's like 100 buckets for the absorber. Remember, before we were always doing blocks, so we did the material absorber. Well, for this, we need the liquid absorber. Doesn't say how much, but it's either 100 or 128 buckets. So we still need to generate a fair amount of starting Mirion. So my plan for that, I think, is we'll make this alloy transformer anyways, because I've already taken down my smelter. I thought I took down my smelteries. Oh, I took down one of our smelteries. I left the other one up, right? Because I thought we might have to use it for this. Since I left the smeltery up, I'll just make a significant batch by hand in the smeltery, and then we can turn it into the Mirion Dimlet. Anyways, there's that, and then the other thing that's a little tricky is this mob duplicator, which has a bunch of parts that are mob drops. But let's take it one step at a time and start with the Mirion singularities. Now, singularities in general, we are only used to make the ultimate singularity, which is basically every material, resource type block that has a block form has a singularity for it, and all the singularities are 9,001 of that block. And this is something eventually we'll have to automate the process of making these ultimate singularities because they're used to make infinity catalysts, which is part of a bunch of the creatives. Cool. So let's see. Mirion is an alloy of. I'm trying to think if would it be easier to automate this or just do batches by hand until I have enough. I did some, back of the napkin type calculations, and I came to the conclusion that to make 128 buckets, at least 128 buckets of Mirion, we need 223 of each of these, ingots or blocks of sand. So I think that's low enough that I'll just go ahead and make it in the smeltery, and then we can use something like I think there's like a floodgate. It's a floodlight, like a fluid placer, I guess. Right, the fluid placer from Axial Editions to send it all into the fluid absorber. So yeah, that should be easier than I initially expected it, honestly. Isn't it beautiful? A rainbow smeltery of disaster. What's actually happening is all the stuff is in here, but since the glass takes up so much room, it's full. Although almost everything is melted. Item can't be. Oh, I think it just can't be melted because we're out of room, right? Yeah, there's actually molten terra steel in here. So, anyways, as it forms into Mirion, it'll make room. And when this is done smelting, When this is done smelting, I'll cast it all out through the fluid placer, which will turn out into the liquid blocks to be picked up. Cool. One thing I want to touch on real quick, though, is despite the fact that we have our transmutation table now, we still can't completely use it to replace all of our automation systems. Because for now, in order to transmute stuff, I have to manually come here and, do the transmutation myself. So, like, these melodic capacitors, remember, this entire system here and a bunch of other stuff around our base is dedicated to making melodic capacitors, right? Well, while they have an EMC value, so that means I can put them in here and grab melodic capacitors out pretty much indefinitely. I have to still do so by hand. So until we can automate the process of using the transmutation table with stuff like energy condensers, or there's even more complicated stuff later in the pack that can accomplish this. Difference between these. Anyways, until we can automate that, we don't quite have the option of ripping out all of our automation quite yet. And it's all alloyed into Mirion, so 147 buckets. Perfect. That's hopefully more than we need anyway, so let's turn this on and place this here, and we should see that. I expected this to be faster. Redstone mode deactivated. Why is it powered? Oh, it isn't powered. This is just sucking it up as soon as it drops. Okay, so this will absorb all that Mirion in the next minute or so. I have everything else ready to build the dimlet. Now, to pump the fluid itself, my favorite pump is, once again, our builder. The RF Tools builder is a very, very powerful block. It can do a lot of stuff. And in this case, it can act as a pump. I'm going to transport the fluid via ender chest, and then we're going to have to set up a bunch of casting basins somewhere to turn the fluid, into blocks. And lastly, I guess while that forms, I should start making the quantum compressor. So let's start with the quantum compressor. This recipe uses a lot of different types of items, and that's a trend we'll see a lot in these, 7x7 and even 9x9 recipes. They tend to use more than 9 items, which later will make automating them a challenge. But for now, we only need 1, so I'm not going to bother with automation. 1 quantum compressor. And in the meantime, I expect this is done, right? 100%, all right? So with that, we should be able to come here and make our dimlets. Where was that machine? I think I can just put all these things in here. I don't have to set the dimlet. Yep. Perfect. Now with that, we can now make a dimension of it, and you get the gist. I'll, ooh, power. That's not good. Part of the reason we ran out of power is because we ran out of fuel. I actually never hooked our Eulorium crate here up to our AE system, so I guess now is finally time to do that. And regarding the cables, I think I'm going to switch over to stellar energy conduits eventually. They do 2 billion a tick versus the cryoflux ducts, which I think go, quote, infinite, but I think infinite is 2.17 billion anyways. I'm just too darn lazy to replace wires for the 30,000th time. So when and if I get bored enough, or these wires are bad enough that they bug me to the point where I need to, I'll replace them. But I'll do it off camera because replacing wires for half an hour really sucks. Anyways, there's one thing I realized I need to do before I can use this dimlet. Because it's a molten fluid, I need a terrain dimlet to go with it, and I don't have a suitable terrain dimlet or craftable terrain dimlet to use with it. Because if I use... Actually... What if I use terrain void with a fluid? I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, I'm going to need a way to create a like a terrain ocean dimlet. Let's see, I want Which of these? No, I don't want void. I want one that's all water. I'm actually not sure which of these is all water. Islands? Oh, liquid. That's what I want. Terrain liquid. But I don't think terrain. Yeah, it's not a craftable one. So to do so, you see that thing in the bottom right? That's a terrain absorber. And if void doesn't work, I'll show you how we can make one of these. All right. So it doesn't look like terrain void with a material is going to work because the game's like, hey, void doesn't need materials. So, do you remember when we first started doing RF tools? We went to this dimension that was just like an empty, a full sea of water, right? Well, if we go there again, we can make an absorber. Let's see, which one do I want? We can make a terrain absorber that can absorb that, and then with that terrain absorber, we can make the dimlet that matches it. However, to get there, is a little bit challenging. Remember when I said, yo, I will never need this dimension again. So I went and ripped its matter receiver out. Well, we can't teleport there anymore because I took the matter receiver. So that's a problem. However, let's see. What I can do is I can send it a new matter receiver if I make a dimension editor. So I think the way it works is I take the dimension tab, put it in here, and then the item I want to send it goes here, and it'll, over the course of a minute or so, basically put this item back in that dimension. All right, so as it finishes up, you see the item is gone now, and I'm pretty sure that means that we should now see there be a teleporter in ID 16. Cool, so now we should be able to teleport there. Alright, and since I teleported to a matter receiver that has no power, the game gave me a lot of pretty nasty debuffs. Good news is I don't think it's going to kill me because I have like 50 hearts. So anyways, we're back in this dimension. I guess it puts us above. Alright, that's fine. So let's power this. Let's see. Because we might have to come back here now. Now that I remember, this dimension actually has something useful. Output. All right, so now when we teleport back here, it won't try to kill us. And what we can do is take these terrain absorbers, and I'm pretty sure if I put it down here, yeah, it'll start absorbing the terrain feature. And they take, I don't know, by the looks of it, maybe 10-20 minutes to do so. So I'm going to drop a chunk loader here and come back in 10-20 minutes. Cool. So when I come back, I set up a few of these because I'm sure I'll need more than one. This will be a fully, absorbed terrain absorber that we can use to now make the liquid terrain dimlet. So while that runs, let's see what else we can work on. I think the next thing we have to make are these crystalline ingots. And they have a pretty unpleasant recipe. So, oh dear, I really hope I don't have to. Is this possible? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go with the crafting recipe instead of the alchemy recipe because the alchemy table is slow and I hate it. Besides that, I guess... Ooh, we have to make osmium crystals. All right, so this is going to be a trip. To make osmium crystals, this is part of like Mechanism's or 5x multiplying line. We need clear osmium slurry, which is we need to wash osmium slurry, which is we have to dissolve osmium ore in sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is made from sulfur trioxide and water vapor. Sulfur, this is like the industrial process. It's not nearly as easy to make sulfuric acid here as it was in Omnifactory. So sulfur dioxide plus oxygen makes sulfur trioxide. Sulfur dioxide comes from sulfur, and I guess we just dissolve sulfur for that. All right, so it's a couple steps. We have oxygen from various places. Yeah, because I wonder if there's an easier way. Doesn't look like it, so I guess we're stuck making the osmium crystals the old-fashioned way. So this little disaster of machines and wires is our crystal factory. it's really two halves. The first half up until here is our sulfuric acid factory. So it starts with a chemical oxidizer making sulfur dioxide and an electrolytic separator making oxygen, and it goes through various steps, to combine them together. First in a chemical infuser, well, basically through two chemical infusers, to eventually make the output of this is sulfuric acid. Then the second half of this factory takes the sulfuric acid, dissolves the ore in it, and then washes the ore and recrystallizes the ore back into crystals. So for now, osmium crystals are all we have to go to. We don't have to, keep processing it. But if you were to keep processing it, you can either directly quartz grind soda into dust, right, and then smelt the dust. That'll get you 5. If you do that, you'll get 5 osmium ingots per ore. Or to go through the rest of the mechanism process, you chemical inject it with salt or hydrogen chloride, I guess. It doesn't necessarily have to be salt. And then that turns into osmium shards, which you purify with oxygen or flint, I believe. I'm not sure I don't think it takes both. And that gives you osmium clumps, which are needed to make the creative fluid tank. So at some point we'll do that. But then you crush it down to dirty osmium dust, enrich it into regular osmium dust, and then you can smelt it again into 5 ingots. So for now, these crystals will suffice as is, though. And in fact, I'm going to start the process for a bit more. This is pretty slow because I don't have any of the upgrades in any of the machines. If I just put some upgrades in, the process will get a lot faster, but I just don't need a lot of this stuff right now. I need 2 per crystal. Is it 2 per ingot or is it 4 per ingot? I need 2 per ingot, and I only need 2 of these ingots for now, right? I already forgot. It's for the wand? Yeah, I only need 2 of these ingots for now. Alright, so in the time that we spent setting up that, we've now finished our terrain absorbers have finished absorbing this ocean terrain, or this liquid terrain. So let's go make our Frisicon dimension. So just as before, the material dimlet goes before the terrain dimlet, and store that 100k a tick. That's fine. And this should build. We're still failing to deliver enough power to it, which scares me. Alright, maybe it's time that I have to rip out all these wires. I'm just going to rip the band-aid off and do it now, as much as it sucks. Well, ripping off band-aids sucks as much as it always sucks, but we're now able to supply this machine with the 100 plus KR a tick it needs, so I can reasonably safely go into the Mirion dimension. Let's clean out our inventory a little bit and plan to head out. Alright, and here we are. If we look outside, oh boy, this is laggy. Anyways, yeah, molten Mirion as far as the eye can see. So I plan, actually, I think I'll pump it and cast it into blocks in this dimension, because the process of casting it into blocks is very visually laggy, but I don't care about visual lag if it's gonna all be here. So yeah, I think I'm gonna so I guess I don't need these ender chests. I'll swap it for ender tanks. I'll swap these ender tanks for ender chests. But I'll pump up the Mirion and cast, use these casting basins to turn them into blocks, and then I'll send the blocks back to our overworld base. So first things first, the pump. All you have to use is use a pump card instead of a quarry card, and you define its settings the same way. It has more or less the same UI, and you just have to put it in here. Then you turn it on with the redstone signal, and it should start filling the drum up top with molten Mirion. Perfect. Now all we have to do is pipe that into casting basins. And I don't know how fast is the pump, I guess, is the question. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. So about 100 buckets a second. And how long does it take for Mirion to cast? ingot or blocks, 20 seconds. So we need to be able to do 100 blocks a second at 20 seconds per block. So 2,000 casting basins to keep up. That's probably a little more than that's probably a little much. Let's go with maybe a tenth of that. Let's go with 200. If we only do that, then our casting basins will bottleneck the process and not the pump. But that's fine. For one, I don't want to deal with setting up 2,000 casting basins, and for two, I feel like that might actually be very laggy, both for the visually and on the on the CPU. So it's barely been like 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, but yeah, we filled up our demonically gargantuan drum, all 65 million millibuckets. I think we're gonna need a bigger buffer. So enter the black hole. Oopsies, enter the black hole tank. This holds 2.1 billion millibuckets. And funny thing is, can I empty this into there? Doesn't look like it, huh? Funny thing is, I have a feeling we're gonna be rid of this or we're gonna fill it up in no time as well. But whatever. So I have the first half of it hooked up. Basically, it's just filling all the casting basins from the top, and then all I have to do is extract the completed result out the bottom. Man, doing the item conduits sucked twice as much as doing the fluid conduits. At least on the fluid side, I just left everything in its default settings because extract is disabled, so it's like, that's fine. So because the default is insert green, I'm breaking my cardinal rule of don't use green channel on no, I should turn this off too, on on fluid conduits, but that I can't be bothered to change the settings on every one of these. But for item conduits, I did have to set the settings on each one because the default is extract green, insert disabled. So I had to, get the settings on one, copy paste it to every single one of them. Anyways, now this ender chest should be linked to our, main item intake. So when I turn this to brown, we should see all the items get pulled out, and then fluids start to replace them. And after 20 seconds, all these fluid blocks should be fully cast, and the process repeats. So let's see, we have 196, just short of 200 casting basins, and each one takes 20 seconds. That's a pretty cool pattern to look at when it's like blinking. Anyways, I think that averages 2 a second. And at 2 a second for the quantum compress, or for the singularity, I think it was 9,000, if I recall. 9,000. At 2 a second, that's 4,500 seconds each, or like 2.5 hours to make two. So like an hour and 15 minutes per singularity. Not the best, not the worst, but it'll do for now. I suspect there will come a time when we need to do better than this, but that time is not now. So anyways, yeah, I think with this we can call our Muradon pump done. Let me make sure I put a chunk loader here somewhere. Doesn't look like I did. Alright, so let's sneak a chunk loader in. And then we can just leave this to its own devices. So the last step is to shove all our Mirion blocks into a quantum compressor to make the singularity. So the recipe is 9,001 blocks to make a singularity, and it takes the ultimate catalyst. The catalyst is not consumed. So go. Abracadabra. Like a button I'm missing. How do I make it start? Alright, I read that the quantum compressor can sometimes be picky, and to fix it, you literally just break it and replace it. And it's working now. So we can see that every few seconds, as the export bus is getting warmed up, it's shoving a stack of items in here, and when it reaches 9,001, it'll produce a singularity. Right now, it's just chilling under the base somewhere that I had, a channel and easy access to power. Eventually, we'll want to build a large farm of singularities. As you call, we need 81 different singularities to make the ultimate singularity. So, but for now we only need 2. Cool. So that is another challenge tackled. Now, a lot of the other components that were just like recursive crafting, like the Opinium core or the go get a random drop from the Erebus, I did between episodes just so that I have the materials ready. I think the last, to clear some of these out, the last thing that we need is this crystalline ingot, and we're basically ready to make the what are we making here? Well, I guess we need the crystalline ingot and the mob duplicator, and then we'll be ready to make the wand of animation. So let's go do the crystalline ingot first. All right, next up are crystalline ingots. So I have materials for exactly 11 of them, and 11 isn't a number that I chose on accident. My plan for these is the first 2 I'll use to make the wand of animation as planned. The other 9 I'll turn into a block, and I'll animate that block. Then we can spawn and duplicate copies of it, and then we can unpack it later into the crystalline ingot for future use. So basically, this way we never have to craft crystalline ingots again, because they use a lot of annoying components. But I mean, stuff like all these crystals have to be made. It's a pain. But now that we have our 11, that should hopefully be all that we will ever have to craft by hand. So let's store those 9 away safely. And whoopsies, that's not where I want to go. All that leaves for wand of animation, I believe is, well, I haven't made the staff yet, but I think that's a very easy craft. The mob duplicators. Take a quick aside to make that staff just so I don't forget later. And complex earth staff is the right one. And just to confirm that all we're missing are the mob duplicators. Okay, so we're missing the duplicators, the singularities, which are still crafting, and this floating tangleberry. Because the duplicator is the hardest, let's do the tangleberry first. So I think all this is we need to make a tangleberry and craft it with a floating flower of any sort. Okay. It's been a while, but I think I still remember how to use the petal apothecary. Seeds. Cool. And then floating flowers, I think they're basically, functionally, they're the same as the regular flowers. But let's see, give me a floating flower. But oh, is that not how you make it? But they don't have to be planted on dirt. They can just like float there. How do I make just a regular floating flower? A glimmering flower past her seeds of dirt. Oh, I need glowstone. Okay. This is what I get for trying to remember recipes by memory. I get almost there, but not quite. All right, a floating tangleberry. So now all that's left for real is, well, besides waiting for our singularities, is that mob duplicator. So while this recipe for the mob duplicator looks like a handful, it's, on second thought, not as bad as it looks. A lot of these components have an EMC value, so those we just need 1 and we can trade for the rest. And then some of the mob drops are like, so let's see, another amethyst crystal. Do we have that? I believe we do. Oh yeah, we have plenty. So I want to specifically get materials to make 1 stack of these mob duplicators, and that's because we have to use 2 of them to make the wand. But after we make the wand, the whole point of the wand is to make mobs to duplicate in the mob duplicator, right? So we're gonna need way more than just 1 of these. So yeah, I think a stack is a good starting point. I have a feeling we'll need to come back for more later. Anyways, nether rime crystals and these magma crawler eyes are both mobs that I think we have to let's see, yeah, whoopsies. I have 3 nether rime crystals. So I'm gonna have to find whatever mob drops these, and then we can set up a root farm for it. I think these whites are the ones that drop the nether rime crystal. Let's see. Yeah. And they spawn, if you're looking for them yourself, in this like icy biome, the what's it called, Arctic Abyss, in the Nether. I think there's also a ore, and I think is this it? No, but there's also netherite ore that spawns in this biome in the Nether as well. But I think it's easier to spawn the mob than it is to try to get the ore. Anyways, the other one we needed comes from magma crawler eyes come from Erebus, I think. And the Erebus is a good reason why your jetpack is never truly obsolete. If we don't have our jetpack on, we can't fly. When you try to fly, you see it says, well, you can fly like very briefly, and then it cancels your flight. So the jetpack will always be useful in these various dimensions that cancel flight. And magma crawlers are mostly found in these, the maze thingies in the Erebus. And they drop their eyes when they die. Cool. And now our magma crawlers are being spawned by Woot. And I'll let this stay here, I'll let it run magma crawlers for a couple minutes, and then I'll swap in whites. And that should get us the netherine crystals and what were the other ones that we needed? The magma crawler eyes that we need for our spawners. Wow, that's a lot of mats. But I think this is all the mats for for one stack of mob duplicators. And that's in the 5x5. Oh, I'm missing lava infused crystal. So close. So remember how before I was worried that I didn't know how to automate the lava infuser because I couldn't pipe lava into it? Well, it turns out we don't need to. We can just pull lava, infused crystals. Let's see, I need a stack of these straight out of the tablet, the transmutation tablet. And then we can do the same with blocks. Alright, so now we can make a block of infused lava crystal. Oh, I grabbed the wrong item. Let's see, block of infused lava crystal. Aha, a stack of these. Quest complete? No? Alright, fine. Anyways, these don't have an EMC value, do they? Okay, they don't. About to say, if they did, I would have been very embarrassed. And this, whoopsies, should make us Wand of Anim. Oh, come on, what am I? Oh, right. So let me see my singularities. Let's see if they're done. I don't think they are, but they might be close. Hey, 3. Okay, so they are done. Which means it took less than 2 hours to make them, I think. I'm pretty sure I haven't been recording for over 2 hours on this episode. Anyways, at least not since that point in it. Alright, this is a huge milestone in the pack. As huge as the transmutation table. So, Wand of Animation. Now that's a quest. Alright, so as I have already mentioned, I want to use... Well, let me demonstrate it first, I guess. Let's, I don't know. We'll just do a cobblestone. If we place a piece of cobblestone on the ground... Now, this does have durability, so you can't do it infinite times, but it can also, I think, it's 64 durability, but it can be, you can mend it, so I'm not too worried. Anyways, when you kill the block, it drops the block that it was made of, always. So you can abuse this in combination again with these where did I put them, the duplicators, because the mob duplicators have a feature where you can spawn, let's see, enable exact copy, where the mob that gets spawned is an exact copy of the mob, the sample mob, and that way you can duplicate effectively any block. So between us being able to use the mob duplicator and the Wand of Animation to dupe any block, and the transmutation table to dupe any item that has an EMC value, the crafting in the rest of the pack is very different from normal. So let's clean some of these items up, just get them off my to-do list. And the next item I want to make is this energy condenser. So when we look at this, any item that has a block form, remember we only need to make one of, and we can duplicate it from there. And same for any item that has an EMC value. So before was we needed 4 blocks of Insanium. Well, now we only need to make 1. For some blocks like this, it's easier just to make more than it is to duplicate them. But yeah, that will make this recipe a lot more easy, and doable. And in earlier times when I mentioned, there's certain mechanics in this pack that'll make the late game a lot less laggy. The wand of animation is one of the biggest ones. Especially when we start looking at some of the real crazy items. Let's go with it's one of the first creative items we make, the fluid tank. Infinity ingots conveniently have an infinity block form, which means we actually only ever need to make 9 infinity ingots. Afterwards, after we make 9 infinity ingots, we can just duplicate the infinity block. Likewise, a big component in the infinity ingot is neutronium. Neutronium has a block form, so on and so forth. So I've already talked about a few blocks that I'm going to duplicate. I think we're going to cut this episode here because it'll take some time to set up the rest of the infrastructure that we need to actually use this stuff. Like the mob duplicator requires a fluid to be powered. It requires essence. So I think we'll leave the setup for all this for next episode. But if you guys want to start speculating as to some of the cool blocks we can clone, then go ahead. Anyways, I hope you like this episode. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.